This is week 101 of the book club. Again, I say this every week. We've been meeting much, much, much longer than that. I think we're probably going towards 5 years. But the book club itself has been up and running for 101 weeks. Crazy to even say that out loud. And the suggestion box is 26 weeks, which is well into 6 months. Tonight's class is Mark 14. What you've done so far is almost 7,300 verses, almost 300 chapters, and over 200,000 words. So I think that this book club has become, I hope and pray for each of you, a winning strategy. Again, I'm not going to stay and spend too much time on this, but I will point out one change. Last week, 379 words was our shortest assignment yet. We moved from the Isaiah 53, which was 387, to Alma 30, or excuse me, I wrote Alma 34 because I copied it from the week up. I'm so sorry. To last week's class, Psalms 94, which was 379 words. And I think we came real close to the longest one this week. So let's get to it. Mark 14, one chapter, 72 verses. Now, I don't think 1,595 words is the most we've ever done, but I think 72 verses might be. I'd have to go back and check that. But this was, I hope, an enjoyable assignment for you. Let's do a quick review, or at least my perspective on a quick review. I found this an intriguing study on the interaction of Jesus Christ and his trusted friends. And we fall under that same moniker. But he spoke to his 12 when he said, I now call you friends. And if you want that reference, that's John 15:15. I believe this chapter uncovers the how, what, and why of the humanity of these 12 men. And maybe by doing that, uncovers that same thing within each one of us. Throughout these 72 verses and all that this chapter becomes, I think that Jesus Christ showed an amazing tenacity, compassion, forgiveness, courage, humanity, and again, so much more, but certainly all the above. We also discover, while he is showing this side of himself, we discover that his 12 confidants unfortunately expressed betrayal, denial, cowardice, ignorance, and much more. I don't say that to take snips at these men, but to show that they were only human, and to show that Christ embraced them in spite of. My thought was, in this particular chapter, we take more turns in these 72 verses than anyone who travels down Lombard Street in San Francisco, California. And I supplied a few pictures if you don't know it as America's crookedest street. And so we just took so many turns in this, and I'm going to try to highlight those. We read of the foolish plotting within and without the inner circle, versus at the same time, concurrently, the wisdom of Jesus planning. And that manifested a couple different times, a couple different ways. We read of how he communed with and entrusted his chosen, regardless of their flaws, regardless of their failings. As an example, when he overtly asked them for their help, they covertly slept. When he covertly asked them for their support, they overtly asked them for their support, they covertly slid away from him and hid from his captors, if you will. I know that you may not have read Mark 13, but I want you to know that it ended with one word, and it was good counsel Jesus Christ gave his 12. And the very last word in Mark 13 is watch. Ironically, this next chapter that we read, Mark 14, begins as religious leaders plot on the Passover. And I likened these connivers, if you will, to the same death angels that they were able to avoid in the original Passover. Jesus Christ, who knows and sees all, surely stood watch over all that was taking place, and he did it knowingly. He could have taken action, he could have done any number of things, but instead he just waited for everything to unfold. The second turn we made, and that's that first turn is from watch to this plotting that we read in the first few verses. The second turn, as I said, it more turns than Lombard. The second turn that we make was even a second irony, if you will, an extraordinary event, nonetheless. It showed, is probably the best way to say this, a repayment made to Jesus Christ for his kindness. The sister of Lazarus comes in among again his 12 and made a most respectful outpouring as he, excuse the pun, as she poured ointment on his head. And those who saw this happen, I thought that they showed their love for money, which, as we know, is the root of all evil, saw this gesture as waste. We could have used this for that. We could have used this for other things. And you know the dialogue that goes on. I did not want to steal away any of these verses. Jesus, though, framed this act as an anointing of his body in advance of his death. He said, to the burying. So he felt that she had come in to anoint him, to prep his body in advance. I found a little redundant, sorry for the prep it in advance. I found that an extraordinary interpretation of what had just taken place. And as we know, and this is the irony, soon after this, his kindness would be repaid by all others with an arrest, a conviction, and a crucifixion. Then the chapter turns again. This third turn has one of his own betraying him. And it says that Judas went unto. So he sought them. And that verse that he seeks them, it says it this way. He sought how he might conveniently betray him. And so that we understand what it's saying is he wanted to do it in a way that was convenient to him, that he might be hidden in this plot to betray. Turn number 4. While this evil plotting was going on around the Savior, he was planning for higher things. And then there's this exchange. How do we find the room? And he gives them instruction. So he instructed his disciples to find a man who worked for a man who had a room. And that became the sacred place where he and his 12 communed together one final time pre-crucifixion. And it was in this place that he prophesied the betrayal. And one of my favorite parts of this is when he prophesied that one would betray, they began to wonder aloud, is it I? Is it I? Is it I? And it showed a vulnerability in each one of them that they thought, am I the one who's going to betray? So we get a little more insight into the human side of these 12. The fifth turn within these 72 verses was the communion itself, as they communed together. And it's important to note who he communed with knowledge. And we know with knowledge because he's already called one out. He calls Peter out later, so he knows what's going to happen. Once this communion service, this makeshift communion service is over, they're going to go to the Mount of Olives. He knows what's going to happen this very night. So he understood he was communing with deniers, fearmongers who are going to flee, and even a betrayer. Then what happens? Turn number 6 on this spiritual Lombard Street journey. They spent the evening in the garden. And what was intended for that time together was to pray in preparation. Unless, of course, they were dead asleep. And they were dead asleep. He prophesied to them how they would flee. He said concerning the 12, all shall be offended because of me this night. He went on to tell them that the shepherd would be smitten, and he said, and the sheep, speaking to the 12, shall be scattered. After they slept while he prayed for the 3rd time, he finally submitted, finally gave in to their human weakness, and he said, sleep on now, take your rest. Turn number 7 comes next, and that's the capturing of his literal capture. He was arrested following, which must have been so difficult, following Judas' kiss of betrayal. Now we know about the sword, and we know about the Peter cutting the ear off and him healing it, but so much must have gone on in this garden. But most importantly, what I wanted to capture in this 7th turn was the attitude, the human attitude of the 12. And they did exactly as was defined in the word. They all forsook him and fled, said the 72nd chapter. The 8th turn saw Jesus led away with Peter following. Maybe too close. But we'll talk about that in turn 9. Conviction seemingly came easy. And this is all because of the setup of this kangaroo court where chief priests, elders, and scribes had already had their case ready and made. They had planted testimonies with people who brought lies and deception. And in spite of such choreographing, the 72nd chapter said this, their witnesses agreed not together. Or their witness, it said, agreed not together, meaning they weren't cohesive. They didn't blend together. Throughout it all, Jesus said, held his peace. And then when he was questioned, he finally answered, and he prophesied how they would all see him reign supreme. After convicting him to die, was that enough? No. They attempted to degrade him, to humiliate him, striking him, spitting upon him, calling him names, mistreating him in every way possible. And finally, we get to the last and 9th turn, again, in my perspective, of the 72nd chapter, which was Peter's attempt to prove Jesus wrong about denying him. He wanted to prove that he was not going to deny him. However, his extrication from the implication that he was part of Jesus Christ came by way of his lying himself, even using curse words to prove he couldn't have been a follower of Jesus Christ, all to avoid his own arrest. Then the rooster crowed 3 times. Then Peter remembered. Then Peter knew. Then Peter fled. And then Peter wept. And I don't know that that's not the route so many take when we understand the disappointment we've caused Jesus Christ. But we have that documented with Peter. Although he was released from these people, from the witnesses, from those right there, released from being arrested, if you will, or apprehended by these people, he was certainly caught in his heart, caught in his soul, caught in his mind. He was guilt-laden. This 14th chapter of Mark is a study on human behavior. And what we find over and over and over again, both 2,000 years ago, as well as in the year 2025, natural motivations lead to human failure. We are dependent on Jesus Christ.